I had the chance to invest in Jason Jacobs when he had started one of the first fitness tracking apps in the App Store called Runkeeper. Grew incredibly fast and ultimately ended up getting acquired by ASICS out of Japan in 2016. Great life-changing event for Jason and a good return for our fund. We talk about the psychological impact that raising so much venture for Runkeeper had on him, how he kind of navigated that roller coaster, what it meant to pursue ideas that investors love but customers could care less about, and why this time around, whatever he pursues, he wants to be able to do it with minimal to no outside funding to avoid those kind of influences. He developed something of a process for exploring new ideas and opportunities. His first kind of run at this, it was climate, and currently it's in AI. When he started in climate, he just went incredibly deep and kind of shamelessly reached out to experts in the field to kind of come up the learning curve, recognizing how he learned best, which was not reading, it was actually people. It was engaging with ideas and topics with experts in the field. Effectively, what that did was create this kind of learning machine flywheel where he was able to not only come up the learning curve quickly in climate, but also develop an incredible network in the category as well. This time around, he's got kind of a different goal. When I got to know him, he was kidless, he was young, he was working around the clock. Fast forward to today, he's got two, very active young kids. He's trying to be as involved in their life as he can be, and so he's trying to kind of manage this tension of still being very ambitious, having a bunch of experience and ideas that he wants to pursue, at the same time having a life, having a family, wanting to be present. Really kind of about having your cake and eating it too. It's about, can someone at this stage of their career have it all? A business that thrives and is scaling, and a family that's held together and connected. So we cover all of that in this conversation. Really fun to reconnect with Jason. We have a lot of history together. I hope it comes through in this conversation. Enjoy this conversation with Jason Jacobs from The Next. How old were you when I invested in Runkeeper? You were in your 30s, right?
Yeah, early 30s.
How old were you when you started it?
I started in 2008, so I was like 31, 32, something like that.
That was like your first proper startup, right? Like you.
Yeah, I worked in venture-backed companies, but all on the people side. I mean, all like in functional roles, recruiting, sales, business development, got my MBA.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a headhunter doing CEO searches. I
remember this, that's right. Yeah. How long did you do that?
Year and a half. The same time I did every job. I never stayed at a company longer than 2 years.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. By design or by disposition?
I would be drinking from a fire hose, and then it would peter out, and then I'd get impatient, and I'd go drink from a fire hose somewhere else, just like I'm doing now. Yeah, yeah. At least with building, like as a founder, like I can stay on the horse for longer.
Did you?
I'm a bit like Sahil. I have seasons.
I don't know if you have seasons, but you certainly have styles, right? But you locked in a Runkeeper. You did that for years.
No, but you think I wanted to be a Runkeeper the last 5 years of it?
No, you were miserable.
Yeah.
How long was it fun?
I couldn't quit. I had to land the plane.
I don't know. How do you tell the Runkeeper story? I tell it through the lens of an investor, which is like, I remember the first time you came to my office in San Francisco. I don't remember how we got connected. I think maybe Twitter.
Twitter.
I think I was probably a pretty early user of Runkeeper. I was like right when I was starting my own kind of fitness journey, and in 1 year, I lost 50 pounds. And Runkeeper was a part of that. Lose It, Runkeeper, that was like, those were kind of core to my, kind of weight loss journey.
Yeah, I was building a consumer app in Boston, and we were definitely an outsider. I mean, I wasn't an engineer. None of us came from the pedigreed firms or pedigreed, like the typical hunting grounds for consumer founders. And so I would pay attention on Twitter to who the insiders were that were using the product, and I would make sure just to hunt them down and introduce myself. And I think that's how I found you. Yeah, and you were actually, I think, the first person who I would consider an insider from a valley who became a true believer, which I think was a big deal foundationally for us to get more.
Well, I remember when we met, you were going out to raise like a much bigger round. You raised like a little bit of money from like some local angels or something, but then you were going out to raise a much bigger round.
Well, we hadn't started the process yet. I think we were thinking about it because we had real traction and revenue and an early emerging brand that should have been able to raise that kind of round. But what we didn't have is the sophistication in terms of the storytelling, the grasp of the metrics, how do we go to market, staging and phasing, the long vision, how the dots all connect together, the use of capital. Like, we just weren't sophisticated at that time. So I think while if you took a more sophisticated team or a team like us with better guidance around us to help us, to help be translators and help us speak the Valley language, I think we could have gotten a bigger round done at that time. But we didn't even start the process because we got, a few friendly discussions in and just realized that we didn't have our act together.
And I thought, well, you may not have your act together, but I can probably help you get your act together. And I think it's that's
why we did the small round with you, because I was so psyched to get someone like you on our side to help be that translator. Yeah, that was a big deal for us, Bryce.
How did it go from an iPhone app to the health graph? And what was the health graph?
When Runkeeper started, I was just dying to start a company and had been banging my head against a wall with different ideas. And because I'd worked in areas of tech that I wasn't necessarily passionate about. I kind of grew up working in, around here, it was like data storage, optical networking, the plumbing of the internet, stuff that matters, but not necessarily stuff that got me personally juiced. But I thought the widget didn't matter. I was working with great people. I was building companies from small to big. I was learning a lot. I was progressing in my career. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And so I was looking in tech because tech is what I know, but I didn't know that you could find areas of tech where I could also be passionate about because I'd only worked in this infrastructure layer, and I was driving myself crazy, so I trained for a marathon. I was training for the marathon using Nike Plus, which at the time was a chip in the shoe, and it was like, man, like, this is too big an idea to be a little side project from a shoe company. Like, this should be a company, and oh, by the way, there's like all these different devices, and and smartphones are gonna have GPS in them and stuff like that. Like, someone should build a platform that works with all these. And at the time, I saw there was this website, Map My Run, where you could like click your way through the map and it would tell you how far you went and save it. And I looked at their traffic, and although they were still small, like they were going like this. And then it was just like a bunch of other little dinky side project things. And it was like, gosh, like.
Was Strava around back then?
No,
I remember.
No one was around. None of the mobile apps. There were no mobile apps. There were no mobile apps. This was 2007. Mobile iPhone apps were didn't come out.
So Map My Fitness and even Strava, for the longest time, you had to have a Garmin watch. You would sync your data to it, right? Like, there was no iPhone app. There was none of that. Well, in fact, it was comical that you would even think that you could go run with this big brick in your pocket.
Well, what happened was that I was going to build this website and was going around trying to figure out how to get it built, and found a few people who were interested in helping build the website, but it felt weird to work with part-timers to build this website when I was all in, and the hourglass of my savings was turned upside down already. My salary was gone. So I felt real pressure to like dive in head first. I felt like I needed a team that could do the same. But then there was this mobile development shop or web development shop who had one of these Apple licenses who was like, have you considered building an iPhone app? And I was like, well, I hadn't considered it, but like, it makes so much sense. Like, this isn't where things are. This is where the puck is going, and it's not announced that the iPhone has GPS yet, but of course it's going to have GPS. And Nike Plus already works with your iPod, so people are already used to essentially running with their phone. And if you build an iPhone app, then you won't even need the chip in the shoe, and then it can work across every shoe brand and not just Nike. So so started with this team. Nights and weekends building the website, and then the mobile.
This is like an outsourced development shop.
Yeah, well, the development shop building just the iPhone app, and we ended up being there right at launch of the App Store. So that's where Runkeeper started. It was just a run tracker. It was a run tracker, and the device was a data collector, and it would send it to the web, where it was your history, and you could have friends and stuff like that. And from there, we Apple started featuring us in their ads on the back of the big newspapers, and our logo was up in a bunch of different Apple stores all over the world. And I went out to anyone who had written about Nike Plus and said, hey, like, you wrote about Nike Plus, this chip in the shoe that works with your iPod. Well, like, now that the iPhone is here, you can use GPS, you don't need that, and Nike's not there, and here we are, right? And so from the early days, although we were just this weird hodgepodge together team that hadn't raised any funding, the narrative in the media was Nike versus Runkeeper, right? Because Nike eventually came, right? But we were kind of on the map early, which I think that timing really helped us a lot. It certainly didn't carry us over the next decade or 8 or 9 years that we built the company, but I think it gave us permission to exist. So that's Runkeeper. The health graph was we were early and profitable and in our element. It was running, but we started to see that the category was getting more crowded with more apps, and it was like, it's just a run tracker. How does it not get washed out over time? And one of the ways in my inexperienced pea-brain that I thought we would get defensibility was through capital and the optics of essentially owning the category, and let's go raise a big venture round with a bunch of fancy investors and just box everyone out, which is so dumb. But that was my thinking at the time. But in order to do that, we need a story beyond running because, investors weren't excited about a running app. And so that was a health graph. We were kind of dicking around with integrating with a few different devices that made sense for runners, like a body scale or a pedometer or a nutrition app, right? And so there were a few that made sense, and then it was like, well, let's have an API, and so we started making an API, and then by the time the API went out the door, it kind of graduated from just being the data that makes sense for runners to a health graph, because Google Health just failed. And why did they fail? They failed because, they just assume they get all the data, but consumers don't want to give the data if they don't have a reason to give the data. And here we are, and consumers are clamoring to give us more and more data. So let's go get all the data of your health and, kind of build the next Google Health, which,
Well, I think at that time, Google Health had gone down, and then you had the friend graph from Facebook, which, if you weren't around at the time, you didn't realize what a big part of their narrative, at least, it had become. And so the idea of a health graph made perfect sense.
Yeah, it was well timed from a market standpoint, and I think it was an interesting company for someone to try to build. But it's a very different company than building a running company, and I think that's where we accidentally made a mess. Is that we had a product and customers and a team that was runners that was very excited to keep building this product and community, and then we had this health graph vision over here, and we started integrating with a bunch of data sources that didn't even necessarily makes sense for runners.
And didn't give you any materially more interesting data to look at it as now if I take my weight data and my running data and I take my, whatever else we were sucking in at the time, it didn't give some composite view that was like, oh, wow, there's some really new insights coming out of this.
Yeah, and where that made a mess is that essentially then you have investors who invested because of this health graph vision, and you have a core product in a category that's getting more competitive, where you have a leadership position, but there's people nipping at your heels, and you really need to hunker down and focus. So we had this bifurcated strategy. Are we a health company or are we a running company? And to the team, it's like, we're running, and then to the board, it's like we're health. And then we were profitable when we raised that round, and then we had so much time, too much time, and not enough experience or conviction to get everyone on the same page and make the hard call. So we just lived, I call it like carbon monoxide wartime. Yeah.
What do you mean? Why does that visual land with you?
Oh, because carbon monoxide is slow and invisible. We were having a blast as a company. We had a little bar set up in the office, and everyone loved working there. And we're darlings in the media, and but we have that revenue that was profitable, we deprioritize it after we raised on the health graph vision, and then it started atrophying, which atrophying revenue is worse than no revenue, right? But we were allergic to anyone even talking about revenue in the company. And then most of our resources were focused on running, but without a long vision of where it's going directionally. And then we had this health thing over here that we knew we had to get back to, but we just need to focus over here for now, and then we'll come back to that later. And we kind of never did. But then, the board was asking when are we? What the heck? And meanwhile, the running category started consolidating, and we went from being the leader to not getting the call when the M&A happens. And it's well, what the heck? And it's well, why would it? Because we're doing everything in our power to not be a running company, and they're buying running apps, right? So,
right.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Was there one?
And this was years that we lived in this mode. That was not.
Those were not fun board meetings.
No.
The fact that you're saying it, I'm actually having, like, it's actually a little triggering.
For me too. For me too. Yeah, Bryce. You were like the board all the way through.
How many times did Strava come up in a board meeting?
Yeah. Well,
I just remember at one point you're just like, can we not talk about this? Like, does this have to come up every single time?
Well, I mean, they came in and they knew who they were and who they weren't and who they served and who they didn't, and they were just so focused, and it ran through like every fiber of their being from top to bottom and bottom to top, right? And that's what we should have been all the way through.
How much did chasing investment influence that dilution of vision?
A ton. I mean, at the time, that was in the era of where TechCrunch was pretty cool, right? You know, being speakers at certain events was pretty cool, and it was almost like it was more about the crowd that you keep than it was about the value that you create for the world. And in order to keep that crowd, you need to, like, how much you raise and who you raise from mattered. At least that was what I was indoctrinated to believe in. That's not to pass off the responsibility to someone other than myself, but gosh, I mean, that is severely misguided, and I think it is far healthier to focus on building things of value the way you want to build them, staying true to your convictions, and then surrounding yourselves with others who will keep you honest, but who are not constantly trying to pull you away from the things that feel right to you, but who want to feed the things that feel right to you and help make them so in their biggest form. And I thought that as we grew, I didn't trust my own inner weirdness, essentially, to stay true to it, and thought that I needed to listen to the experts, essentially. And yeah, I mean, there's a whole long list of mistakes I made, but that's just an appetizer smattering, I guess.
No, it just reminds me, Mike has had this saying that I just love so much, was like, ButcherBox wanted to be something. Like, it knew what it wanted to be, and he kind of had to, at a certain point, just get out of the way, or really tune in to what the company wants to be versus what he wanted it to be.
Yeah, and with the benefit, like, to take that analogy, Runkeeper wanted to be this thing that was working over there, that was rolling, and instead of like feeding it and getting creative and experimenting and how do we extend it and make it better and get out of its way and fan the flames, it was like, no, like, you, Runkeeper, need to go over there, right? And it's like that didn't work for anybody.
When I think about Runkeeper, to my mind, it's always it is a living example of the antidote to that idea that companies are bought, not sold, because you sold the company. We saw the MapMyFitness deal go down. We didn't get the call. And I think it was MapMyFitness, wasn't it?
Well, that was the first one, but then...
Who was the last one that, like, ticked it for? It was like a chew.
Well, then it was Endomondo, then it was MyFitnessPal, then it was Runtastic.
Runtastic.
Yeah.
So Runtastic happened, and I remember you and I talking, and we didn't get the call. Like, no one called us to talk to us. We were suddenly seeing Runtastic, and I want to say it was like a 9-figure deal. It was like a 200-ish.
I think it was like 240.
And I remember we were like, okay, if they got to that price with that business, there was clearly competition. So let's figure out who their banker was, and we're going to figure out who lost.
But if you recall, some important things happened a year before that, right? I mean, we tried to go out and raise another round. It was like 2 or 3 years after the Health Graph round. And what did we have? We had like, we were still growing, but it was like declining growth. We had like flat, atrophying, small recurring revenue that would have been much better if we didn't have it. Really couldn't show evidence that we were heading down the Health Graph path at all, but at the same time, the running path was getting, I don't know if it's commoditized, whatever. It was like a lot more crowded.
And like you said, you were on the other side of consolidation. Now we're watching 3, 4 companies start getting picked up. Like, clearly there's going to be a couple winners, and it wasn't feeling like we were going to be one of those.
Yeah, although, I mean, we were still in the leadership pack, but the problem was it didn't feel like anyone was going to be, it felt like the leadership pack was only going to get more diluted over time, and that there was no, it was not a monopoly category. In order to go out and raise that next round, we would have had to tell an even bigger story and make an even bigger mess. And so I went out and tried to tell that story, but gosh, that felt terrible. I mean, that's why we built the second product, is that we needed a bigger story beyond running. We built like a pedometer, and it was a beautiful app, and the team put so much craft and heart and love into it, but it's like, how did that help us strategically? It doesn't at all, right? In fact, it makes it worse.
To your point, though,
yeah.
In your mind, at least, it fills out this like bigger health graph. Like, it's not just running. Now we have the pedometer. Now we have like this whole universe of, and investors generally like that, especially if it's up and to the right, and you weren't up and to the right.
Well, and all I wanted to do was just get back to running. It's like, I love running. I want to get back to those early days. We were in our element. I felt like I was actually equipped to lead that kind of company. Like, this is what our assets, want. This is what our users want. Like, let's just get back to running. And so fortunately, the board supported the company with an inside round. But I remember telling you guys, like, we won't ever ask for anything again. And then, like, leave us alone and let us build. Because, like,
I remember the leave us alone and let us build.
Well, because I've been pandering to, trying to do this tap dance of like health graph for like 3 years. And it's like, all right, the only way this company has any chance is if we get back to running and we stand on our own 2 feet. So like, and then the other big thing that happened was that I had brought in finally I had a real number 2, because I kept, my CEO group for years was like, until you get to 200 employees, like, you're the COO and the CEO, like, you're both. And it's like, I'll tell you what, if I ever lead another company, I am not the CEO and the COO, because I know what I'm good at, and it is not any of the crap that COOs do. I'm not that operational. I'm a mad scientist, and I do some things really well, and we can debate about whether those things are things that equip me to be a CEO or not. But I can tell you what, like, I do those things really well, probably better than a lot of the more operational CEOs. But then the operational stuff I do worse than the more operational CEOs. And so when I had a real COO, then finally it was like a yin and a yang, and the business getting healthier. But part of getting healthier meant, like, stripping out a bunch of the fat. And fat doesn't mean bad people, exceptional people who I think a lot of them still don't like me, which sucks. But like, we had no choice. Like, we had so much fat. Like, we stripped out a third of the team, including some awesome, great people that I still regret having to do, but we had to do it, because then we got focused, and not only did we get more done per person, we got more done overall, just being focused and pouring everything into being running and profitable. And so when we did that, our burn went from this to right around profitability, and then we had time, and then we had focus, then we got our narrative back, and because we got our narrative back, it's like, hey, now we're working our way back to being an attractive running property for anyone that's left. And as it turned out, there was one company left that didn't have an answer in running, that also had the means and the appetite and believed that they needed an answer in running, and then we got acquired. Yeah. Simple, right?
It was a rifle shot. That's why I say, when I say Runkeeper is an example of companies that get sold, not bought, you literally had one conversation. You did not go and like market the company. You found the banker.
Well, 'cause we knew, because the banker had just run a full process. So we knew that there was only one person in the mix.
That's right.
Yeah, there was one. Yeah, I mean, there was not a market.
There was not a market.
Yeah.
You created a market of one, and you got a great price for it.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I don't know how they'll feel, since I'm pretty removed from it now. But it seems like it was pretty good success on the other side. Like, I'm really proud of that, because a lot of them aren't, and I think relative to how a lot of them go, I think it ended up like being a win for everybody.
What kind of shape were you in personally at the end of that? Because you are a maniac. Yeah. As long as I've known you, you have one gear. And it's like...
Well, 2 gears. See, I mean, the other one is off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how were you feeling when that check cleared?
I mean, I felt relieved, but then I immediately went into the mode of like, I felt a real duty to try to make the acquisition successful on the other side. And so I took my duties really seriously. And although I didn't have a lot of day-to-day duties, because I was the head of global digital, and Runkeeper reported into me, and my COO, Dan, became the CEO. And so he's the CEO of Runkeeper. Runkeeper reported into the head of global digital, and nothing else did. So it's like, he's running the company. I'm trying to stay out of his way to run the company. So what did I do? I lived on airplanes while I think at the time I had 2 kids. Yeah.
So you're going back and forth to Japan.
Yeah, and I was traveling like a maniac, not just to Japan. I think in the 18 months or so that I was there post-acquisition, I think I did probably 7 trips to Japan, and I went to all over the place to different major regions for the company, meeting the leadership and essentially shaking hands and kissing babies. Like, here's what we're here to do, asking a bunch of questions, here to learn, following all that information back to the team, making introductions from our team to the right people in these different regions, create some global employment opportunities for the team, enable the team to take on more responsibilities over time, just set the stage for it to evolve from being, kind of a running app within a sneaker company to being like almost like the consumer IT group for a sneaker company. And as it turns out, that's a big meaty role where the team gets to expand in size and stuff like that. But like, am I the right leader to head a consumer IT group in a, big multinational shoe and apparel company? Definitely not. Yeah.
That wasn't something you can grow into.
Yeah, so I slipped out the back door, but then once I did, and my number 2 became the number 1, and it ended up like, I'm really proud of how the acquisition, succession, et cetera, like I feel really good about that, but it's only when I left that all the stress I had been carrying for almost a decade started to thaw out, and then I started having all kinds of existential issues. Like I started, like my prostate started acting up, and what else? I had to get surgery on my foot because of like some ligament stuff, and I was like looking at holistic medicine and meditation and stress management and quitting caffeine, and it was
where was your stress coming from? You had no job, you had no responsibilities, you've made a bunch of money.
Everything I had carried and left unaddressed for the last decade was like catching up with me, essentially. Yeah. So I went through a period of like I don't know if I'll be employable again. Like my best days are behind me. It's like, but I got to get back on the horse. I got to get back on the horse. And
why did you feel that anxiousness to get back on the horse?
I remember the movie. I don't know if viewers were even alive when for this movie, but remember Back to the Future? I know we're around the same age. Yeah. So remember the picture of the family, and every time Marty looked at the picture, like the family members were fading away and becoming invisible. Like I felt like that as an entrepreneur. Like every day I'm on the beach, the world has moved on without me. Like because when you're a founder, like you're kind of at the center, right? I wasn't even on the periphery. I was just invisible, right? Like my phone wasn't ringing. The world had moved on. I'm a nobody, right? And it's like my skill set's atrophying. Like how to build companies is changing. The tool sets are changing. The capital markets are changing. And I don't even understand it. And there's a new group of partners moving in. I don't know those people. I knew their predecessors. Like I better get back on the horse or I'm going to get lapped.
Is that just how you're wired? Because I would imagine there's a bunch of people who would think, okay, I just made life-changing money. I don't have to work again. I can sit on the beach. This is the dream. Why would I get anxious about being less relevant? I could care less. I don't need to be relevant anymore. I did what everybody sets out to do.
Maybe I don't derive purpose from money. Yeah. I don't mean purpose like professional purpose. I mean like, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why are you here?
I don't know. I mean, I think as I get older, that answer's probably changed. I mean, at that time, even though I had kids, they were so young, they were like potted plants, and I really was still mostly thinking about professional things in terms of how to prioritize my time. And I mean, my wife was super supportive when I was traveling for ASICS. I mean, she left her job in the private sector, and she was just home with the kids, and she knew that wasn't going to be forever. And then once we had the money, she was like, all right, now, and the kids are getting a little older, like, I'll go back to work. And she started like putting together cover letters and stuff. But it's like, how am I going to get myself to apply in the private sector? Like, I realized it was just the people that I enjoyed in the private sector. It wasn't necessarily the purpose. And I don't need to do this. Like, she just couldn't get herself to go through the motions. She just kind of like dropped a bomb on me and on her mom and was like, I think I want to be a nurse. So she went back to nursing school. So now, she's working full-time, and her schedule's been demanding, and the kids' schedule's been getting more demanding. And so all of a sudden, when I could just put it all on professional, historically, I have to be around a lot more now, and also I want to be around a lot more now, especially as my kids get into, they're more real people now, and they have more real people problems. They're about to turn 10, about to turn 13. I'm super involved in their activities, especially my older boys' sports, and I just don't want to miss any of it. So it's like priorities really change. Back to the why are you here, right? Like, I know that professional is part of it, and I want to still keep producing and creating. But I also, my parents are getting older. I want to be a good son. I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good person, and I want to produce and have purpose, but it's not the only thing.
How did you deal with it post Runkeeper? It seemed like immediately after that, you threw yourself into another startup right away.
I was just on a general walkabout with no parameters or guardrails. So I was just like, I had the attention span of a gnat. I was like over here, and then over there, and then over here, and then over there. And I had no idea what to build. And it's like, I don't, because I had PTSD on fitness, and it's like, well, besides fitness, I don't even know what I'm passionate about. I mean, I'm passionate about building companies. Like, it's like right back to the same problem of before I discovered that I could build something in fitness. It was like the widget matters, but I don't know what widgets I care about. And this was around the time of HQ Trivia. You remember that HQ Trivia, and Scott Rogowski, the host, and it was like, oh. Like, this is really interesting because I grew up watching Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, the show, and it's like, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, except instead of being a viewer of people competing on TV, like, you're competing from your phone in a native mobile app with live television. Like, that's amazing. Like, that format feels really novel, and gosh, it seems like it will have applications far beyond prize-based entertainment, but it's early days and will require experimentation to figure out where it fits, and also it requires expertise that aren't typically in the same room. It requires the native mobile app and consumer expertise, but it requires like the television production expertise as well. So if you could assemble that expertise in the same room and start experimenting in different categories, maybe build a tech-enabled content portfolio. Now, going back to Runkeeper, like being one of the first iPhone apps right at launch is what gave us permission to exist, but it's not what gave me the staying power to stick through a decade, right? What gave me the staying power to stick through the decade is that I was so passionate about building something at the intersection of fitness and technology. That was the why. The why wasn't iPhone apps, but then the iPhone app gave us permission to exist. This HQ Trivia was the equivalent of the iPhone app. It was like the thing that gives us permission to exist, and that's why we were able to raise some money without any deck or whatever. But it wasn't a why. It wasn't a why. Yeah.
But interestingly, if I recall, the interest of investors, especially as a post-exit founder, came before the idea.
I was pretty active on Twitter at the time, and Twitter was still a place where if you were active in the right ways, then things could actually happen, And so I was just kind of sorting through. I was just kind of breadcrumbing that I'm thinking about this idea, right? And I was starting to maybe think about doing some experimentation in this area, like almost just to like do something instead of just like evaluating 100 different areas, And then Josh Kaufman actually showed up in my DMs, who I've known a long time and who tried to work with us at Runkeeper, and it just didn't work out. And I always regretted not having the opportunity to work with First Round. I just think the world of him and the firm. But he was like, hey, would love to learn more about that. And I was like, oh, like, when I have something to say, I'll let you know. He's like, well, I'm going to be in Boston, whenever, like, can we just get coffee or whatever? So we got together and I told him more about it. And we both were kind of reminiscing about how we missed the opportunity to work together and would both like to. And he's like, well, why don't you just like take a bit of money? And I was like, it's not even a business. He's like, I get it. It's not a business. It's an expedition. Like, I just want to go on the expedition with you. If you get 6 months in, you don't find anything you like, just give it back. Right. All right. And so I didn't have any slides or anything, but I went back to, a couple of the co-founders from Runkeeper and was like, hey, like if we, would you guys want to? And they're like, let's go. Right. So he did that. And then a couple other VCs came in, and then, the offers for like that was priced. And then it was like uncapped notes and, just stupid, right? And so we didn't raise a lot, but we raised. So we had 3 VCs around the table, and we stood up the studio. We subleased a little bit of space from another Boston startup and got the band back together and got the expertise in the room and started experimenting in different categories. But for me, the purpose was just nagging at me, because it was like, the way I justified at the time was like, well, we'll build really purposeful shows, right? But with 3 VCs on the cap table, as we start experimenting in these categories, and that's a hard category to monetize, right? It's like, well, if we're going to do anything that's going to look even remotely like venture scale, the stuff that we ended up gravitating towards was like reinventing QVC and home shopping and stuff like that. And I was just having this existential moment. I was like, yo, and so my co-founders, they didn't feel the same existential purpose. Like, they just wanted to build cool stuff. So they were like, we could greenlight this, we could greenlight that, we could greenlight this, we could greenlight that. And I would greenlight nothing. And they were like, come on, dude, like, let's just go pick any of these things. And I was like, but none of this matters, right? And meanwhile, there was like this drumbeat of doom with climate change, and like, I've not studied climate change. I wasn't steeped in the nature of the problem or the best ways to address it or anything like that. I just knew that, like, I felt the walls closing in, and I was having a harder and harder time focusing on anything that wasn't that, because it's like, if I don't focus, like if we don't focus on that, nothing else matters. But it's like a privilege to even be able to focus on that, because to focus on that, it means you're focused on the longer term and not necessarily focus on how you put food on the table. And here I am not having to worry about putting food on the table, and I'm not focused on that. So if not me, then who, right? That was my thought at the time. And so I ended up going back to the investors and saying, like, I still have like 90% of the capital. I was like, just take it back. And they were
Where
like,
did that conversation go?
well, remember the terms that we raised it. Like, it was an expedition and not and they were like, well, it's totally cool if you're not finding anything you like with this format of live interactive TV. Like, go build whatever you want. Like, we just want to do this with you. Like, go build whatever you want. And I was like, yeah, but if I go and do this walkabout to go figure out what I really want to do, like, that already puts me in a box of having to build a venture-backed startup from zero. Like, I don't know, even, like, I might run for office. I might go teach. I might start a nonprofit. Like, I don't know why do I put any constraints? Like, can you just take it back for me? They took it back. I wrote a post, saying, like, thank you, 2A, or like, goodbye, 2A Labs, I barely knew you, talking about how I gave it back. And I felt shame, and people were like stroking me, like, so noble, like, most people wouldn't do that. And I was like, I feel like a failure. Like, what are you talking about? But I had to do it. One of the angels who participated, because I also had a few angel buddies, but I also wish I hadn't done, right? Because it's just accountability and letting people down, you know? He was like, if you're really worried about climate, just go take a couple weeks and, like, spend time in climate. And so I was like, all right, certainly not going to declare. I'm not going to write any blog posts. I'm not going to declare to myself, like, I don't know that I'm going to focus on climate in any capacity, but I'm just going to learn about climate for a little while. So I went on Google. It was like, all right, IPCC report seems like a big deal. Like, well, I'm going to reach out to an IPCC scientist. And then it's like, all right, like, Clean Tech 1.0 was a bust. Like, let me go find some entrepreneurs that lost their shirt in Clean Tech 1.0. And, like, this dude at the national labs looks like he's smart. And that dude running the academic lab at Harvard, like, he seems like he's well placed. I just started reaching out and having discussions. Super energizing. I was like, it was like water in the desert. I was like, wow, right away, even the fact that I'm focused on learning about this versus not, I feel way less anxious about it because I'm doing something about it instead of being concerned about it and ignoring it. And then 6.5 years later, like, it became this big thing, but that's where it started.
Were you surprised that people were so open to having those conversations? Because it's like, you could go just read the research paper, and a lot of people would default to, like, oh, I'll just read the research paper, see what they had to do. You're reaching out to the researcher and having a direct conversation with them. Were you ever, like, it sounds like that's just how you learn best.
I'm a people learner. Yeah. I mean, I still read too when I can, but, like, my attention span, God, it's like just to get me to sit still. Whereas, I
want you to know, like, this is Jason on, like, a 6.
It's calm, okay.
This is calm.
People were really generous with their time, but also, like, I knew so little that there were so many people I could learn from that, do you think I sat around dwelling whether so-and-so answered my email? Like, I already sent 30 more, you know? So it just started feeding itself. And I think those people, I mean, you don't work in that area if you are looking for the best way to get rich. I mean, you work in that area because you really care about that problem. And so therefore, they were glad to see that more people were reaching out who care about the problem. We're trying to figure out how to mobilize. So they were really generous with their time. And they were also interested to see, like, well, this guy coming in cold from, like, I'm from Boston, but I still consider myself from the Valley in spirit, right? It's like, this, like, Silicon Valley founder type, like, where's he going to end up? Because I was coming in talking to all these people, and I, like, cross tribal lines without meaning to and stuff like that. Like, all these people that aren't typically in the same room. And I was talking to all of them with no preconceived notions, just starting from, like, a clean slate, beginner mind, first principles. And they'd be like, keep me posted on your progress. So I started sending regular updates to this growing list of people who were interested in following the journey. And that just kind of took on a life of its own. And as I talked to more people, the distribution list grew, but at a certain point it flipped from people I was reaching out and meeting with to people that were finding it and getting value from it and signing up on their own. And then that was probably 6 or 12 months.
This was just a newsletter you were putting out of like weekly learnings.
It wasn't even a newsletter. It was equivalent of an investor update for my pre-product market fit walkabout.
Oh, fascinating.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was like, here's the ground I covered this week. Here's the topics I dug into. Here were some surprises. Like, here's some stuff I'm just thinking about.
How do you get over like imposter syndrome? Like you're someone who literally doesn't know anything, reaching out to a researcher who's like spent their whole life studying this stuff. Like, how do you get over that imposter syndrome of like, I don't even know what questions to ask?
That was a big switch that flipped to me that has now switched forever, which is wherever you are on the journey, there's other people who are earlier than you that can get value from seeing you navigate at the stage you're at, wherever you're at. And my wife is like, do you understand like what kind of ego it must take for someone to say, I know nothing about this topic, so, but you really, all of you must care about my journey to learn about this topic. So I'm going to start sharing all of my thoughts on this topic that I know nothing about, because she's so private, you know. And I just find it to be an incredible way to learn and build, because what happens is that, and it's not, again, it's not interesting reading for most people, but for the people who are really, you know, that needle in the haystack of the people that are trying to figure it out, who are coming at it from a similar perspective to you, who swing a big bat, but just are early in the learning curve, like those are the people that find you. And then as your tribe grows, you assemble it with more and more of these serious, well-placed people from diverse backgrounds, and then you can get a lot of stuff done. And it happened to be on that journey that it started learning and writing, and then people started reaching out for advice who were earlier. It was like generals, VCs who were trying to figure out what to do with their capital and time, either personally or as a firm. It was exited entrepreneurs who were trying to figure out what to do with their capital and time. Should they start a company in this category, for example? And they were coming to advice. It's like, well, dude, I don't know what I'm talking about, but you should learn from all these people I'm learning from. So I start recording those discussions, and 500 episodes and many millions of downloads later, it was like, oh crap, like that little podcast enabled me to get super connected, climb the learning curve really quickly, bring a really unique perspective, and build a big following of hammers. And then it led to a fund, right? But it just started by being okay learning in public about something that you don't know much about, which I'm now doing again, but is now like muscle memory and pattern recognition that came from the last 6.5 years.
Was there a subscriber to the list or an email of someone kind of proactively coming inbound that flipped a switch in you, like, okay, I'm onto something here. Like this feels like you're starting to attract the right people to the journey?
I'm finding that as I get further early on, little crumbs are like gold. And then as I go, it's kind of like your body calibrates, and so it takes, it's like drugs. It's like you need a bigger and bigger dose because your caffeine or whatever, like you get used to it, so you need more doses to get the same effect. Like that's what entrepreneurship, that's what building is like for me. Like I start out and it's like, like I get one little bite and it's like, look, like I've struck goals, right? And then as it gets more established, then it's like to get that same rush, it's harder and harder to get because it takes bigger and bigger things to move the needle in that way, right? So I was getting like the drip of that started essentially from day zero. Like I just kind of always knew that it was fertile ground, and as long as I felt that way, I was going to keep feeding it. But then, yeah, by the end, it's I mean, there's a lot of moments that happen along the way, micro moments. But if I look back, there's just
what difference did starting to share it publicly make? Because it started out as a private thing, right? Did you start it with the idea of sharing your learnings along the way?
Before I even had a newsletter, even tweeting about climate felt weird at first. Because like, I'm a tech guy, like what am I doing tweeting about climate? But then gradually it became like most of my Twitter personality, right? Because I was sharing, as I was having these early discussions, it was like, met with a guy today and I was surprised to learn this and this and that. And that would be a tweet, right? So that it kind of started there, and then it was growing on Twitter, and then I was starting to get engagement on Twitter. And then there were these people saying, keep me posted on your progress from the meetings. And then the meetings were accelerating. It just became natural. It was like, that was just the next muscle to build, is like, all right, like I need something that is more efficient and concentrated and longer form than Twitter to share with this, I say like growing tribe of people invested in the journey, but that's just what I told myself to make it okay for me to get up. I mean, that was manufactured accountability,
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That's so good. It is interesting to me that so many people every day are told, like, yeah, keep me posted on what you're doing, and then don't. You know what I mean? You actually took that as like, oh, this person actually cares about this. I'm going to create this mailing list and keep everybody updated who says they want to be updated. Well, where so many people are like, that's such a throwaway comment for most people, but not for you.
Well, because I think a lot about I don't know if Mark Suster wrote this post or reposted this post, but he posted something, this was probably like a decade ago or more, but around like people invest in lines and not dots. I think about that so much. It's like the worse the before picture looks, the better the after picture is going to look, right? And so it's like I like showing people how the sausage is made. It's like showing people in my suckiest form, because then they'll see how quickly, like they'll see my cadence of evolution and progress, and that will mean so much more than if they just like, you know, I've been on a new journey the last few months or whatever. Like if you just see me at this point in time, you'd be like, oh, that dude doesn't know what he's talking about. But if you see me now versus 3 months ago, you'd be like, whoa, he's getting acclimated fast. I'm going to bet on that guy, right? And so actually an IV of me, like it's, you know, and maybe it's over the top and definitely it's opt-in, right? But and plenty of people opt out, right? But like an IV of me, but like you know exactly what you're getting, and like that's gonna attract some people and repel others, and that's fine, because I don't care who repels. I just want to find my people, and it is a magical way to find your people and build your tribe over time.
An IV of me is such a crazy metaphor. That you go your wife's forward. But it's so good. What I wonder too, how much if you would have set out to build MCJ as a fund from the beginning.
Wouldn't have worked. Yeah.
So how much do you think that willingness to be open to any number of possibilities, you know, this MCJ could have led to you running like a think tank. It could have led to you starting a company in clean tech. It could have gone any number of different ways.
So there's many different ways to start things 0 to 1. I happen to have found a way to start things 0 to 1 that is a perfect glove fit for me, that I have extreme conviction in, that I have pattern recognition and muscle memory and can do again and again. And I don't know if it'll work this next time around, but I have extreme conviction it's going to work this time around.
What I love is you have extreme conviction, but you have no idea what that means.
Yeah, no. Like I tried explaining it to like my friend's wife at a birthday party, a 50th birthday party the other night. Oh crap, not mine. I was
it's coming up.
Yeah.
It's coming up.
But I tried explaining it to her, and I was like, I'm on to my next thing. She's like, what are you doing? And I explained it, and she's like, yeah, but what are you doing? Yeah, but I don't, okay, so you're learning, but like, what are you doing? It's like, no, like, the journey started, the starting then got off, like, I'm back! And it's like the lights are on and nobody's home, right? Like, it is just not, it's not intuitive, but like.
What do they miss in it? What's like the non-intuitive thing to someone who isn't wired the way you're wired to learn like this?
I think that in a job search, in some regards, if you approach it right, the longer the search takes, the better. Because other than financial constraints, of course, but like there's as much value in the process as there is in the outcome, right? Same thing. Like this is essentially just a job search, but I see value in the process, and I like going in not focused on what company am I going to build, what angle am I going to have, what business model am I going to have. Like I am a crazy builder. That is the only thing that I am. Yeah, I'm not employable. I'm not an investor. I'm not like a part-timer fractional this or CEO coach or something like that. Like I'm a crazy builder. The only problem now is that I have a lot more constraints, and my portfolio of ambition is allocated to a lot more than just professional building. Now it's also allocated to family and health, right? And those things are uncompromisable. So I need to find a way to build when it's one of the buckets and not the only bucket. But other than that, a crazy builder is all I am and all I will ever be. And now I know.
Family, health. That's a very different Jason mode than the one you've operated in before.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There has to be some nervousness around, like, even whether that mode is in your, like, is it even in your DNA? Is it even possible?
Well, it's coming up with like if you take kids sports, for example, it's like,
because like even your kids sports, you don't do like, oh, my kid plays like on the weekends. No, he's like freaking at the rink every day, all day. Like
Oh, like yeah, it's like
He's on travel teams. You've got a rink in your backyard.
I'm like part trainer, part agent, right? It's like how can I have a job because the kid sports needs everything, and then it's like how can I do kid sports when the job needs everything? And it's like it's like how can I do either of those things when my aging parents need everything? And then it's like it's like how can I do any of that when like we like to go to Vermont a lot? It's like when Vermont needs everything. Like all I want to do is be in Vermont, and it's like oh my god, I'm pulled in so many directions. Now these are first world problems. I'm extremely lucky and fortunate, but I'm kind of tortured at the same time. I feel like there's tug of war in my time and attention because it used to be that I could just point at one thing and focus on only that thing at the expense of all other things. And like, I can never be that way again. Yeah.
What suggests that the pattern will repeat as you start getting into this new journey?
Well, I'm so acutely aware of my tendencies, and I'm so acutely aware of what's at stake, and I'm very confident that the pattern won't repeat because, I mean, even MCJ, the pattern didn't repeat. I did it in a more balanced way. I think the issue is that as the firm started growing up, it started demanding my time and attention in ways that didn't fit with the growing demands and attention on the family side, and so I addressed it like that. There you go.
Part of the way you're framing it is embedding the intentionality in it.
Yeah.
Which is like, yeah, I'd be curious to hear how you talk about it. It's also one of those things like when we're texting, I feel like I keep having to remind you of like, remember, like that part of like that finding that balance. I think that's the part of this that's really going to resonate with people, because I think you might be feeling it from a different level of the economic, like pyramid. I think tons of people are feeling it. I think, especially as tech's gotten more mature, like that wave you and I came through, like that, we're all now in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah, but you know what gets me though is I still feel like if you look at where the capital's pointed, where the best founders are pointed and stuff like that, it tends to be towards the most ambitious professional stuff.
For sure.
Right? At all costs,
yeah.
Right? And I don't want to lose access to learning about the most ambitious professional stuff by talking more about balance, because in some ways balance feels concessionary, right? And no one's
balance feels concessionary is crazy.
Yeah, no one who's like a glass chewing profit seeker wants anything to do with concessionary anything.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. So how do you come to terms with that? Because you still are a glass chewing, capital seeking missile.
Well, I think that still needs to be. I think I'm sorting through those knots as we speak. I don't have it all figured out yet.
Maybe it's helpful to kind of frame it up.
Yeah. Okay.
I
have some real life, examples of how that tug of war. But why don't we frame it up first?
It's not me to frame it up. It's your journey we're on here with.
Fine. So
next.
Yeah. So when I left day to day, it's like I had all this time, and it's like, well, where does that leave me? And it's like, all right, well, I mean, the constraints are pretty big on the personal side, but they can't, they're not going to be the only thing. Like running around to hockey rinks and soccer fields and trumpet lessons and Hebrew school and whatever like that. I'm really glad I get to do all that, but like this is not going to be the only thing, right? And then it's like, all right, well, I'm not really employable in a traditional office setting, as my wife and people who know me best, can clearly attest. And I am not in a position to go do the profit seeking at all costs and like running around trying to raise the money and navigating a contentious board and like hiring tons of people and dealing with burn rates and how fast things are moving and needing to keep up, and it's never big enough and it's never hard enough and whatever it takes, and I can't be in that mode now. I have too much else going on, but I also can't be in the mode of like I'm gonna play golf, or I'm gonna be a CEO coach, or I'm gonna be a fractional executive, or I'm gonna be a board member in some place. It's like,
But that's interesting, because the startup world would lead you to believe it is a binary decision. It would lead you to believe that like you're either going crazy, killing yourself, grinding, or else you're retired.
Yeah, or you're less ambitious. Where you can be, you can have a front row seat, but you're not on stage, right? And it's like, you know what, like. I need to be on stage. Like I am gonna be building, something important. I will. That's what I do. That's my purpose in life, like, or at least professionally. I have other purpose, but that is a big bucket of purpose for me. I'm going to do it. And I'm not going to do it in the way that conventional wisdom says, it needs to be done, in terms of like, grinding his back and like balances out. And it's like, okay, maybe for you, but like, I'm over here, like, carving my own path. And like, I'm going to be at the hockey games. I'm going to be doing the skills. I'm going to be on the soccer field. I'm going to be at the parent teacher meetings. I'm going to be at the concerts. I'm not going to travel for business when I can avoid it. Like, those are real, like, I'm not going to compromise on those things, but I'm going to go build big stuff. And so it's like, well, how do you do that? Like, you're just trying to have your cake and eat it too. And it's like, yes, I'm trying to have my cake and eat it too. It's like, well, that can't be done. It's like, well, historically, conventional wisdom is it can't be done. I'm going to go, like, prove that it can. So that's kind of one part of the journey, is half that. And the other half is like, well, gosh, like, what is happening with AI and these emerging tools? It seems like, more and more can be done with less and less resource, less capital, less time, less people, less shoveling crap, like more focused on strategy. Like, there's so much noise and grift and hype and oversaturation and whatever in the short term, but in the longer term, underlying, it seems like there's something really profound happening. And I want to understand it better. Number one, I want to get it on the tip of the spear and understand it better. I want to understand selfishly how I might be able to leverage some of that to have my cake and eat it too over here. And more broadly, I want to understand what implications it will have for how startups get built and funded. And more broadly than that, what implications will it have on how we work and live? So that's the journey. It's like, if in its simplest form, and I don't have a simple way to describe it, it's like, how do I build different in a way that can be fully present at home without compromising ambition? And how can AI help facilitate that? And if AI, it's not an AI journey, if AI plays no role, but I still achieve it, I don't care, right? But I think what I'm not going to do is go get on the AI path at all costs and not build different. Like, the building different is the most uncompromisable part to me. And I'm sorting through that publicly. Like, yeah, how do I love what I do? I want to be learning a lot, drinking from a fire hose. I want to be pushed out of my comfort zone. I want to be in my zone of excellence and delight. I want to shovel as little crap as possible and not do, as much of the things that I don't want to do as I can. I want to work with a small team, either just me or a small team, not a big team. I want to have lots of flexibility and control, so ideally no outside capital. But I want to go build like a big, important, not necessarily big people-wise, but like an important, enduring company that does well financially and also does well, does something that I derive a lot of purpose from and feel proud about. Yeah. What form that takes, though, like, I don't know.
That's the journey.
That's the journey.
And that's the playbook. And I think that would be interesting to me, because watching you do it with MCJ, you were figuring it out as you went that time. Now you've got this like playbook.
It is.
And so when you mention that you're going to start poking around some of these ideas, where do you start? Because I mean, you're as flat-footed in AI as you were in climate.
Yeah, I was. Although I'm still early, but
this is what I want to get into. Is like, you're a month into it. So, like, are you still feeling flat-footed?
No. Big thing was 11 weeks ago sending the first weekly update, because whether there's, 2 people that subscribe or 1 million people that subscribe, whether, 0 people read it or, 100,000 read it, it doesn't matter. What matters to me is that I'm sending it every week. I'm committed to, and in my mind, anyone could see it, right? And that's the important thing. So
and what's in it? It's basically what? What's in the weekly update?
I sit down and I usually bang it out in like no more than an hour, probably less, and it's just kind of stream of consciousness from the week. Like, here's, was it productive? How's I feeling? What am I worried about? What am I excited about? What ahas did I have? What ideation is taking place? What podcast episodes did I do? Who did I learn from? What did I learn from that? Like, what areas am I looking to tackle next? Like, what articles did I read that were interesting? I mean, not all these things are in every update, and it's still a work in progress figuring out, like, right now they're not structured as standalone updates that could be content on their own. It's essentially just assuming that who's ever reading it has read all of them and knows me intimately, right? So there's probably not much context there, but I kind of don't give a crap. Like, it's not for them, it's for me, right? The fun that becomes, a growing, it's still small, but a growing subscriber list, a growing amount of inbounds that I receive, a growing amount of, people asking if they can come on the show, people saying, reaching out for advice, whatever. And then the ideas are also getting fleshed out week to week as well. And so the podcast is helping inform that. The show is helping inform that. But also increasingly, it's like, okay, I got this podcast and the newsletter. There's going to be so much tooling that could help this flywheel run faster. How does that get built? Do I need a team for that? Should I be building it? Like, is ChatGPT my team, or do I need a team? Is it a junior person? Is it a senior person? Is it part-time? Is it full-time? Is it a partner? Is it, these are all the things I'm starting to think about. So essentially I'm just living out loud. And there's like a weekly, it's kind of like if you're trying to lose weight and you weigh in weekly and you try not to check the scale every day, like I write once a week.
Are you getting closer to answers about whether having your cake and eating it too is even possible?
I mean, my sense is that, like with MCJ, the journey will become the destination. I think I'm already there. I don't have a business model yet, but that'll come. I'm not in a rush. Yeah, I mean, first...
Because for you is the journey. It's like, it's the exploration.
Yeah, I'm in flow state.
Is probably why...
I'm in flow state. Flow state and being able to pay my bills is there. The paying the bills part is missing, but I'm in such flow state. And I'm making such headway climbing the learning curve, bringing a unique perspective, getting more connected, getting my hands dirtier with the tools, building a tribe of collaborators, that there'll be ample ways to make money. And I don't need to build a unicorn company or something. I just need to cover my nut for my lifestyle, doing things that I love and building something that I'm proud of. And I'm very confident that this is that. Yeah.
How confident is your wife or this woman at the party? How do you square it with them?
I mean, my wife has learned just to trust that while she doesn't understand it, that she understands, that she believes strongly in my ability to navigate it and provide for the family. And I've proven that time and time again. So now she just trusts. So she doesn't really stress over it. She just wants me to be happy and healthy and wants to make sure that our family is provided for. And as long as those things are there, I can do whatever I want. And I feel really lucky to have a spouse that's as supportive as that. And I try to be the same way as her. I don't love some of the crazy nursing hours, but it makes her happy, and we make sacrifices for each other.
And even describing it, you're like, without investors, why does that matter?
When I go out on a run, I don't chart the route before I go, no matter how long I'm going to be out for. I don't even know how long I'm going to be out. I don't know how far I'm going to go. I don't know what direction I'll go. I just decide as I go, and I just love being out running. That's kind of how I build companies, right? And also, when I want to stop, I stop, right? And I want to stay free to do what I want to do and not do what I don't want to do, and I don't want to let anyone down. And I want to always just be able to do what I want, I guess. Yeah.
No, I remember we talked and you're like, I don't have control of my calendar. But just structurally, being an investor requires a totally different engagement mode.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Like now, I'm building my own thing, and I get up every day and I think about my thing and where I want to take it and what experiments I want to run and who I want to talk to. I don't fill my calendar with any meetings I don't want to take, and I don't learn about anything I don't want to learn about, and I don't report on anything I don't want to report on, and I essentially don't do anything I don't want to do. Yeah. Whereas an investor, I feel like it's the opposite. It's like goalie, 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 duck, dodge. It's like everything's coming at you, and you really should be doing all of it. And I don't want to do any of it.
So good. That's so good.
The fact that, although I grind, I was working until 11 o'clock last night, and I started working really early yesterday. It's like, well, you're working founder hours. It's like, well, hockey season just ended, and I'm relishing in the fact that I'm not having to leave for the rink at 2 p.m., right? But also, at the same time, if I'm working and it's like all of a sudden, the snow's melting and it's a 60-degree day, I'm dropping everything and I'm going to go on a long run. And I don't care what's on my schedule, right? And so I just want, that's what an example of freedom. It's not that I want to work less. I just want everything to be, maybe I'm an old prima donna. I guess I clearly am an old prima donna. It needs to be on my terms. I'm sorry to say it, but it's true.
Well, I'm a big fan of people doing their thing on their terms.
That's what it's all
Genuine. I mean,
about.
honestly,
Yeah.
like so much of my experience with you and Runkeeper informed so many of the decisions we make around indie.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that got to a place where it wasn't on my terms, and I on my watch. It's my
But then I
fault.
watched
Yeah.
it, like, as you were bringing it back to your terms there at the end, like I could see the energy come back.
Yep.
You could see the focus coming back,
Yep.
and it was like, oh, right.
That's why we got acquired,
they've been
That's why we
trying
got acquired.
they've been trying
Yeah.
to play some other game.
Yeah.
Now they're back in their zone, and like,
Yeah.
surprise, surprise, it's actually working.
But that's an important thing to catch in the story, is that it wasn't just a rifle shot. It was a rifle shot that I felt savvy and dialed in enough to make because I had been regaining my energy, control, mastery, autonomy. So by the time there was a rifle shot to make, I sniffed it out and made it because I was back.
Yeah.
You know, and I got the company back.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Honestly, that's why, I mean, so much of that is just at the heart of indie. Like, I just want more people to be in that position because I think that's when you win.
yeah.
Like, I see so many people playing so many other people's games and losing and wondering why.
I can't do it. I mean, not only will I not be as effective, but like I mean, I guess I'm a baby, but like I will achieve, if I can just stay true to my own weirdness. I now believe that is my only path of even having a chance of achieving greatness. If I try to do anyone else's game other than mine, I have no shot, and I will be miserable.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jason Jacobs from The Next. He's got a ton of energy that I think comes through in spades in this episode. I hope there were some ideas or insights that he had that are meaningful for you and what it is you're exploring. If you're working on anything related to these ideas that we get into and having Indie take a look at partnering with you on it, feel free to reach out. hello@indie.vc.